for attending this morning our training on blindness, sensitivity, and service dogs. In October of last year, a woman came to the R.A. Gray building to go to the Museum of Florida History to see the quilt exhibit. This woman was blind and had her guide. I want to thank you all for attending this morning our training on blindness, sensitivity, and service dogs. In October of last year, a woman came to the R.A. Gray building to go to the Museum of Florida History to see the quilt exhibit. This woman was blind and had her guide dog with her. A security guard approached her as she was walking into the museum and told her that she could not take the dog into the museum. The dog had his working harness on, and it was obvious that he was a service animal. The woman tried to explain to the guard that she was blind and it was her service animal, but he demanded to see the dog's paperwork and then grabbed the dog's harness. Everything about this encounter was wrong. That woman, Tiffany Baylor, is with us today. Ms. Baylor, who is a trainer with the Department of Education Division of Blind Services, has graciously agreed to provide training on how to properly interact with blind or visually impaired patrons and their service dogs who come to Department of State facilities. She's accompanied by Brian Chambliss, who is also with the Division of Blind Services. You've been selected to receive this training because you are considered a first point of contact person, whether you work as a museum guide or with a library at the service desk or the Division of Elections service desk or other places in the Department of State where you are likely to encounter a blind or visually impaired patron and service dog in the course of your job. We want to make sure that the type of thing that happened to Ms. Baylor never happens again at any Department of State facility. The training will be approximately 2 hours today, and it is an interactive training, and we encourage all of you to ask questions if you have any questions. Please welcome Tiffany Baylor and Brian Chambliss.
Good morning. Like he said, my name is Tiffany Baylor, and I work for a Division of Blind Services, and I'm here to give you all a little information about blindness and accessibility laws so that when you have a patron that comes into your facility, they'll be able to interact with you appropriately. Okay, so we're going to start off by letting you know that I am what we call legally blind. I have a guide dog over there. His name is Lando. And legally blind, I'm going to give you an idea of what it looks like for me. Okay, so let's all take your hand straight up, and then I would like you to take your right hand and put it over your right eye, cover it completely. Then I'd like you to make a circle with your left hand, and then put it over your left eye, and then squint a bit so that there would be a little blur to it. And this is pretty much what I'm looking at in my daily travels. This is the way my vision is. So, keeping that in mind, if you have a question or a comment, please feel free to raise your hand if you'd like, and Brian may catch that. Or you can just say speak out. Go ahead and speak out and ask me the question, because that way I'll know you're there. Because frankly, right now, I'm looking at you through this. So, okay? Okay, are y'all there? Yes. All right, see now this is what I just asked, you see. Okay, all right, good. All righty, so let's start off with some accessibility laws. Now, I know that a lot of you are aware and probably have heard of the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, and it's the law that allows for disabilities to have accessibility into different places that are public use, okay? So Brian is going to read you the nitty-gritty of the law.
ADA law, section 36 under the 36.302C under the Americans with Disabilities Act, privately owned businesses that serve the public, such as restaurants, hotels, retail stores, taxi cabs, theaters, concert halls, and sports facilities, are prohibited from discriminating against individuals with disabilities. The ADA requires these businesses to allow people with disabilities to bring their service animals onto business premises in whatever areas customers are generally allowed.
Okay, Did y'all hear that? Now keep in mind that it's talking about where the general public is allowed. So if there are places like up in the top offices on the other floors, that's not a place where general public is allowed, and so it's understandable that someone trying to go up there who has a service dog, just as if they didn't have a service dog, would not be allowed up there. But any place like your museum downstairs, like the lobby here and the cafeteria downstairs, these are all areas that a service dog and a person with a service dog they're allowed to access, okay? All right, this is just a slide to explain that there are different kinds of service dogs. Now granted, guide dogs are the ones that we're talking about here today. However, there are dogs for pulling wheelchairs and alerting people about to have a seizure and all kinds of things with PTSD, not comfort animals. They aren't covered under the ADA. But these are also, the other ones that I've spoken of, these are also allowed in the facility. And the mindset behind that is that they're just an extension of us, as us being the people who are using the service animal. They're an extension of us. They're not supposed to be seen as a separate entity because they're helping us to do things that we normally would do, but we're just unable to complete. So they're just an extension. So if I'm allowed to do blankety blankety blank, then he is allowed to do that and help me get there, okay? These are just some of the public accommodations that are listed that a service dog and accessibility is required. And you guys are a place of public display or collection, which I think is somewhere in here. And then some of the other areas also that they're allowed to be.
Ma'am?
Yes.
You've used the term dogs, and I'm aware that they sometimes use ponies for these kinds of things.
Yes. Well, right now, I'm not really I don't have a lot of information about the ponies because there's a lot of controversy. Some people are saying okay and some people are not. My concern, frankly, is that you cannot potty train a pony. I'm just, and I'm sure that my dog will not go to the restroom until I tell him to go to the restroom, and he's on a specific schedule that the handler teaches and trains. My dog, if he even had to vomit, I don't mean to get so graphic, but even if he had to vomit, my former dog would hold it in his mouth until I let him go outside. They're very neat and very well trained. A horse, you just can't stop them from going potty when they have to go potty, and we know that from parades, don't we? So they actually hook a baggie type thingy on the back of them so that if they go while you're working, I'm not really ready for that, so I don't have much to say in that area, but I'm not sure yet if that is going to be fully accepted yet.
Thank you.
Good question.
I have another question.
Sure.
So you said that they're not comfort animals. Is there an easy way to distinguish between a calming PTSD service animal?
I believe that, I'm going to go into this later, but you have 2 questions you can ask the person, and I'll explain those later, to ask if you're not sure if that animal is a service animal. One way that you can tell a little bit is that they're going to be very well behaved if they are a service animal, and if it's not a comfort animal. There's other ways, but we're going to get into that in just a little while. So if you hold your question, I'll hit back on that a little later. Okay, these are my 2 questions. Wow, that was quick. Well, okay, these are the 2 questions you can ask a person if you're not sure whether or not it is a service animal. The first question is the dog a service animal required because of a disability? And the second question is, what work or task has the dog been trained to do? The reason why these questions, you might be thinking they're somewhat vague, but if HIPAA says you can't go ask somebody all their business about their disability, then you could understand why you can't just ask a person and require them to tell you all about their disability. So just simply asking if the dog is required because of a disability is enough to say, yeah, there's obviously a disability. The person says yes. Then they might say, what task is he? Oh, he's a guide dog. Okay, then those are your questions. A lot of this is there's new legislation that's coming up that's going to allow legal ramifications if someone is pretending that their service dog or that their house pet is a service dog, and we'll talk about that later, but these are the only questions that you can ask the person, because you really have to respect their privacy and where they are with their disability. When I first got my first guide dog, I was very not wanting to stand out, so much so that I'd rather trip over trash cans than have a service dog or have a cane. So you just don't know where the person is, and they might not really want to be, how the teenagers say, busted out in front of everybody about their visual impairment or about their disability. Because frankly, if I was to walk in here, you guys would have seen me out in town and I didn't have my guide dog with me because my daughter was taking it to the potty, and I was just sitting out there, you probably wouldn't know that I was visually impaired. And so, you know, some people would like to just, I guess, fit in. But I don't know who doesn't want to fit in, really, in the world in general, sighted or blind. So just keep in mind that you have to have some respect and leave them with their dignity, okay? You got that, y'all? Yes. You got 2 questions, okay? All right. All right, the person, and I'm put this slide in here because these things actually happen. The person can't ask the person about the person's disability, like I just said earlier, because of the HIPAA laws and that kind of thing too. You cannot require a specific identification card. Now let me point out, most guide dog schools will provide the guide dog handler with an ID card and a certification and that type of thing. And we use that when we go on a ship or out of town out of the country and we need to get our passports together and that type of thing. But generally, walking down the street and leaving from my lunch period at work and walking over here to see a Braille quilt, I didn't even have my purse. At least of all had my medical documentation and my proof of disability and the guide dog's cards and things like that. So the general populace, when they're just walking around, we're not going to carry all that. So that's one of the reasons you can't be expected to use that as allowing them to come in if they have that with them, okay? People actually also sometimes ask you to let the dog prove it, so to speak. You know, oh, your service dog is a retrieving dog for if you drop something. Okay, let's see, show us the task he's been trained to do. You cannot ask them to prove it to you and have the dog dance for you, so to speak, okay? With the person, well, you got your 2 questions. How many questions you got? 2. Okay, good. All right. All right, a person with a disabilities, you cannot treat the person who has a disability and the service dog differently than you treat other patrons. For example, if you are allowing everybody to go into the exhibit with the armadillo area, then you all know what I'm talking about downstairs where they have the giant dilla. Okay. So if you have other people allowed to go there, you can't say, oh, but that person with the guide dog can't because, let's say, the dilla was real. You say because it scared the dilla, or I don't know, or that something. But you have to allow them to go everywhere that the general public is allowed to go. You cannot charge them a fee that's different, like a pet fee. And even like hotels and stuff, they can't charge a pet fee that they would charge for a pet to come to the hotel. You can't charge a pet fee. And here's the biggest reason why. Is a service dog a pet? No. So how are you going to charge a pet fee for something that's not a pet? This is an extension of us, okay? It helps me get to where I have to go to do the things I have to do and to do it with dignity so I can still do the things I did before I started to lose my sight, okay?